A very good day to all of you. Good day to you, Dr. Naslin, and my fellow classmates who are watching this presentation video. My name is Rio, and I'll be the main presenter today throughout this whole presentation. So today we'll be discussing about cognitive theory of multimedia learning, CTML, and its application in educational video. So without further ado, let's begin. Now before we jump into the main content, I would like to let you know what we're going to explore today. So the first one we're going to talk about is learning objectives, then we're going to proceed to CTML model author, and then moving on to introduction to CTML model. And we will talk about the key elements, assumptions, cognitive load theory, CLT, 12 multimedia learning principles, educational video, application in educational video, and we will summarize into one conclusion. So first one, learning objectives. Now after you finish watching this tutorial, you'll be able to, number one, understand the basic principles of the cognitive theory of multimedia learning, CTML. You'll also be able to identify the key elements with assumptions of the CTML model. Next, you'll be able to recognize the author credited for the creation of CTML model. You'll be able to grasp the concept of cognitive load theory, CLT, and its relevance to multimedia learning. You'll be able to explain the 12 multimedia learning principles proposed by the CTML model. You'll be able to outline different types of educational video and using it on the right time. And next, you'll be able to analyze the effectiveness of educational videos based on CTML model. And lastly, you'll be able to design and develop educational videos that utilizes CTML model for efficient learning outcomes. Now, first of all, let's talk about the person who developed this model, which is Dr. Richard E. Mayer. He is an American educational psychologist and distinguished professor of psychology at the University of California, Santa Barbara, UCSB. So he obtained his PhD in psychology from the University of Michigan in 1973. He is also the president of Division 15 Educational Psychology of the American Psychological Association. And he is the vice president of the American Educational Research Association for Division C, Learning and Instruction. Next, we're going to talk about the selected major awards that he has won. So throughout many awards that I found, I just listed 4 right here. The first one, James McKean Cattell Award for a Lifetime of Outstanding Contributions to Applied Psychological Research, Association for Psychological Science. Next, he also won E.L. Thorndike Award for Career Achievement in Educational Psychology, American Psychological Association Division 15. Next, he won Scribner Award for Outstanding Research in Learning and Instruction, American Educational Research Association Division C. And lastly, he is also the winner of Jonathan Award for Excellence in Research in the field of Instructional Design and Technology, Association for Educational Communications and Technology. So let's talk about him himself and his theory of CTML model. So from the major awards that we mentioned just now, he is already well-known figure in educational psychology research field, and he is significantly dealing with problem solving and multimedia learning. So during 1980s, he laid the groundwork and contributed to the development of CTML, explaining how this cognitive process and multimedia learning involve with each other from multiple sources of information. And all these things, he published his theory in the Cambridge Handbook of Multimedia Learning. So if you would like to know more about him, I've actually attached all these references down below. So all you need to do is get a slide. You can just copy and paste the link and you will get all the information in detailed form and you can read more about him. Now next we're going to talk about introduction to CTML model. Alright, so if you go to Google or you go to ChatGPT or different search engines, Google Bard, you'll be able to get a very solid definition of CTML. But I like to make things simple so you can understand what I'm talking about. So in the simplest way to explain CTML is a type of learning that uses multimedia methods, such as through the use of images and text, just like that. So I provided 3 examples right here. Example number 1, learning through PowerPoint presentation, like what you're looking right now. You're looking at my PowerPoint presentation. This is also part of CTML, an example of CTML. Example number 2, you're watching a pre-recorded lecture. Also, you're doing it right now because I pre-recorded this and I upload to YouTube and you are now listening to me. Thank you very much for watching. Example number 3, reading a textbook. Very straightforward, right? So the cognitive theory of multimedia learning is a study of how people communicate and learn through words and images. So we here, alright, CTML, you need to remember 5 main cognitive processes. So number 1, selecting relevant words from text or narration. Number 2, selecting relevant images from presented illustrations. Number 3, organizing selected words into verbal representation. Number 4, organizing selected images into pictorial representation. And number 5, integrate both of these representations, including with your prior knowledge and also experience. Now you might be thinking how to remember all these 5 processes. It's very simple actually. Number 1, you just need to remember the word select. So you select the words and then you select the images. Number 2, the keyword number 2 here is to organize. So after you have select, you organize selected words and selected images. And number 3, the keyword number 3 is to integrate both of these with your prior knowledge and also your experience. So all these 5 processes will ensure a meaningful learning in a multimedia environment. So here's the thing. Human brain, our brain, we take in information through 2 separate channels. Visual channel from our eyes and auditory channels from our ears. We're going to talk about it in detail later in the next part, but we're going to go through this one first. So the learner, once we see the information, we will process in our learning memory and we will choose the relevant images and words to remember. Somehow we're not going to remember everything because there is a limitation right there. We're going to talk about it later. Okay, so we select all these relevant things and then we integrate all the information with our prior knowledge and also our experience. So all these things, once they combine, it's going to become a long-term memory. And then when it becomes long-term memory, we will have a very good understanding on the context, of course, efficiently. So next, we are going to talk about this diagram. So whenever we talk about CTML, you will see this diagram. It's actually a simple representation of how sensor memory works, and then transferring to working memory and then to long-term memory. But we're going to talk about this one by one in the next part. So here's the whole thing, the key elements assumption. So right here we have 3 main assumptions for designing effective multimedia learning materials. You just need to remember 3. Alright, the first one, dual channels. We have 2 channels, auditory and also visual channels. This is for us to process the information and of course to accept all this information coming in. Now the second one is limited capacity. So each channel we have a limited capacity to absorb things, to get all the relevant information at a time. And number 3, active processing. So active processing is where we are going to process everything. We're going to select, organize and then integrate together, and including our prior knowledge, and become a long-term memory. So we're going to talk about it one by one. So the first one, dual channels. Now dual means 2. It's easy to understand. So we have 2 channels. Whatever we see through our eyes, we will call it visual channels. And whatever things that we see through, we hear to our ears, we call it auditory channels. So according to Mayer, the verbal and visual channels in our working memory can be used for processing information simultaneously, thus enhancing the process of learning. And this dual channel principle is closely associated with Pivio's dual coding theory and Baddeley's model of working memory. Number 2, limited capacity. So here's the thing, we see things, we hear things, and we got all the information. But you have to understand, we have a limitation right there. Okay, so example number 1 right here is that when I present to you animation, or you're looking at my presentation right now, okay, how many visuals can you remember? Alright, there is a limitation right there, right? So this is what we mean by limited capacity. Alright, another example, you are listening to my presentation right now, right? Okay, so how many words or how many concepts you can actually absorb in? Alright, that's just only a few words. Maybe you remember assumption, maybe you remember about CTML, maybe you remember about Dr. Mayer. Alright, so you only get a few words out of all. Alright, and it all happens through our consciousness. Okay, so this principle is closely related to Baddeley's theory of working memory and Sweller's cognitive load theory, which we're going to talk about it in the next part. Now, the last one for the key elements assumption will be active processing. So this is a process where this is a principle that talks about how we actively construct our knowledge with all the information that we obtain, and also how we integrate it with our prior knowledge and our prior experience. Right? Instead of just taking it in, instead of just receiving it. All right. So right here, all right, we highlight the relevant information and then we organize and then we integrate. Again, from Mayer, active processors who seek to make sense of multimedia presentations. And this can be related to Whitrock's generative learning theory and Dewey's active learning theory. So I actually include a simple table representation of how sensory memory, working memory, and also long-term memory, and the description, the capacity, duration, format, and you can refer to it. It's very easy to understand, and once you understand this, assumptions is no longer a problem for you. Okay, so now we're going to talk about cognitive load theory, CLT. Now, Mayer's CTML relies heavily on the understanding of cognitive load. So to understand CLT, number one, it is an instructional design theory that explains how human brains' working memory manage information at one time. So here's the thing, if I present to you many words, many images all at once, it will become a situation, we call it cognitive load. So when cognitive load happens, this is what it means. The information processing demands exceed the learner's cognitive processing capacity. Alright, so we all have limited mental storage capacity. And when this exceeded, negative load will occur. That means it will become a burden, it will become a stress for us. So it is actually proposed by Emeritus Professor at the NSW, University of New South Wales, by Dr. John Sweller in the journal Cognitive Science 1988. So he mentioned that learning environment is deeply connected with human cognitive capacity. And you have to align both of this, then you will get efficient learning. Now here's the thing. He also suggested that we should prevent from inserting too many information or additional unnecessary activities that don't contribute to learning. And in his proposal, he did mention that we have three types of cognitive load: extraneous, intrinsic, and germane. And only poor instructional design will increase unnecessary cognitive load. So let's talk about number one, extraneous cognitive load, also known as extraneous processing. So this is the load where we are required to use our working memory for non-priority objective tasks. That means it's not the main priority things that we have to do it. All right, and then it also put efforts on material that do not contribute to the learning outcome. Now, another way to discuss about this, it would be about the obstacles or distraction that set back the completion of cognitive tasks. Something like, for example, I want to study, all right, but somehow my environment is too noisy. We have all the car sounds, traffic jam sounds, thunderstorm. This become an extraneous cognitive load. Another example, all right, is that learners are compulsory to remember instructions for mini activities rather than the key concepts that has been taught in the classroom. So I believe during examination, your lecturer is going to ask you more about the key concepts rather than what happened during the mini activities. What are the rules about the mini activities? All these are not contributing to the learning outcome itself, right? So the key concepts are much more important. So if you focus on the wrong thing, that will become extraneous cognitive load. Now the next one is intrinsic cognitive load. We call it essential processing as well. So this is created when the information is too complicated for you to understand, but somehow you have to process it. And it also indicates the difficulty level of the learning materials. Of course, when things is very complicated, very difficult, you would need extra effort for your working memory to work out on it. So a very good example here is that my mathematics is not so good, okay? And if you ask me that I have to remember all these mathematics symbols, meanings, and the usage, it would become a burden for me because I don't like it. So I have to put extra effort on my working memory to figure out all these things. All right. So, but we have another one, germane cognitive load, also known as generative processing. Now this one is a little bit better. So it's proper learning effort leading to schema production and automation. Now, different from the previous loads, extraneous and intrinsic, this one is the work already involved in the learning from the task. Okay, we're going to use back our example just now, where I hate mathematics and then I'm required to remember all the symbols, all that, the symbols, the usage, all that. So how are we going to solve it? Through germane cognitive load. My lecturer assigned me to create an infographic or a diagram or flowcharts to explain about all these things. So I am basically using simple tasks to digest or to learn something very complicated. So imagine this. The learning would be easier for me to understand and would be easier for me to digest. So here's the thing. After you understand all this cognitive load, we have 3 types of load. Now, how are we going to utilize it so our learning can be effective? Now, you cannot say something like, oh, we're going to kick out all the extraneous cognitive load, because you have to somehow optimize it, because it will happen anyhow. So we have to optimize extraneous cognitive load. Second is we have to manage intrinsic cognitive load. And lastly, we need to promote germane cognitive load. And this will promote effective learning, right? If our instructors do these 3 things. Okay, so at the same time, Mayer and Moreno also suggested 9 different methods that is capable to reduce cognitive load in multimedia learning. So we have offloading, we have segmenting, pre-training, weeding, signaling, aligning, eliminate redundancy, synchronizing, and individualizing. So to know more about all these things, you can refer to our website, which we are going to have it later. Right, so you just have we have all the details right there. So just go and have a look. Next, we're going to talk about 12 multimedia learning principles. Now, these learning principles are basically a guidelines to develop multimedia learning experiences effectively. So number 1, the main purpose right here is to help instructor to create engaging and effective multimedia learning experiences. So this way, learners, when they are presented with all these learning materials, they will be able to process the information effectively. And in the end, learning retention can be maximized dramatically and learning outcomes will be enhanced. So let's talk about the first one, coherence principle. Also, this is part of reducing extraneous processing. So learning will become effective if irrelevant information is removed. Alright, look at the diagram right there. If we remove all these unnecessary messages, unnecessary visuals, learning will become effective. Alright, and another thing is that words and visuals should closely align and work together to convey the right message. And of course, if you have all these unnecessary things going on, you display it out, it will only misguide or distract your learners. So how to apply this one? You should include relevant graphics and text. Avoid unnecessary audios and music that would distract your learners, and use simple infographics and diagrams instead of complicated figures. The second one, signaling principle, also part of reducing extraneous processing. So learners learn best when they are presented exactly with what to pay attention to on screen. Now, signaling is very simple to remember. Signal. You give your learners a signal. Like, okay, I give you a paragraph. I want you to straight away focus on this part, this sentence. So you use arrows, you use bold text, you use color highlighting features, pointy icons. So your learners will immediately pay attention to that when you display your information straight away. Okay, so this is number 2. Next, we have number 3, redundancy principle, also part of reducing extraneous processing. So this means that we avoid presenting similar content in different formats simultaneously. So when we look at, for example, YouTube channel, right, we have the narration and animation. That is good enough, all right? But if you add a text right there, it becomes something redundant. That is why redundancy, all right? So you overload your learners' memory, and then you obstruct the learning, which is kind of distracting to them. Okay, so try to use either graphic or text to complement the narration. Don't add it all right? You have nice narration, you have nice visuals. That's it, all right? You don't have to add in all this distraction stuff, all right? And if possible, focus more on the graphics, okay? Now, the number 4 principle, spatial contiguity principle, also part of reducing extraneous processing. So number 1, learning can be more efficient when text and visuals are presented closely on the screen. I look at the diagram itself. You'd prefer something like this because you will be able to connect between the elements, and then you will be able to gain the right message. Now, in design terms, this is what we call harmonious relationship. So look at something like this, all right, this one. You'll be able to notice that they work together closely, all right. If you have something of a visual right here and then the text right here, like the bottom image right here, it's not going to be effective. All right, people will think that they are not related at all, but then they are related. So how to apply? Keep the text and visuals physically close together in the frame. Use grids and alignment to maintain the distance between each element. Now we have number 5, temporal contiguity principle, also part of reducing extraneous processing, but I think this is the last one. So this actually means that when corresponding text and visuals are presented simultaneously instead of consecutive order, learning will become effective. All right. So if you use this principle, it allows your learners to piece and process the information together, allowing them to build meaningful connections between all elements. So an example right here, when you watch an animation and then the lip sync kind of delay, like for example, my mouth right now, I'm talking and then you're listening to what my mouth should come out, like the audio, the sound, the words that should come out from my mouth. That is why you feel, yeah, it's okay. But how about there's a delay? You will feel not comfortable at all. All right. Another way is to place relevant text and visuals not overloaded on the same screen. So number 6, segmenting principle. Now, here we're going to talk about managing essential processing. So number 1, better learning outcome can be achieved when information is arranged in segments instead of continuous flow. All right, so try to have segments, all right, and you can provide them some control over the pace so your learners can, they can break it down themselves, manage all the smaller units, so the learning experience will become a lot better. So how to apply? Organize content in manageable and bite-sized segments. Don't pack all in, all right, into one single lesson, module, or slide. And another thing is that you let your learners to have the control over the pace with media controls. For example, pause, for example, stop, next, all this. All right, so this is for segmenting principle. We also have number 7, pre-training principle, also part of managing essential processing. So prior knowledge is important, and activating it will allow learners to learn better as they already understand the basics and retain new information. So this is what I do usually. I teach Adobe software a lot. So before I start, I would let them have a revision, or I would just ask them, do you still remember these terms? Do you still remember these definitions? Or some basic concepts before we jump into the advanced topic. Okay, so how to apply? We can provide overview of key concepts. We can also prepare cheat sheet of terms and definitions for revisions. And in my case, I prepare them some shortcut key, so they will be able to quickly revise it. Another thing is to prep your learners with tools necessary to proceed with the course and complete the task given. So next, we are going to talk about modality principle, also part of managing essential processing. All right, so deeper learning can be achieved when visuals and spoken words are presented instead of visuals and text. So we prefer visual and narration. All right, if you have all the narration throw into the display, all right, your learners will feel stressed. They will be overwhelmed by it. So here's the thing, understand the balance of visuals and text. Okay, so how to apply? You limit the use of text if necessary. Rely more on visuals, images, and voiceovers. So one example right here, if you want to demonstrate process, use animation. If you want to explain complicated concepts, use narration. So this is for modality principle. Now, the next one we're going to talk about is multimedia principle, part of fostering generative processing. So learners learn best when a combination of text and visuals are presented rather than just the text alone, like the previous one. Okay, so you present information in multiple multimedia formats can help your learners to process efficiently and effectively. This will be able to let your learners to build connections between verbal and pictorial models in their own ways. So try to apply a mixture of visuals and text instead of just the text alone. All right, try to have all these things. Now, visual can be used to illustrate key concepts as it helps to enhance and clarify the information. Next one we're going to talk about is personalization principle, part of fostering generative processing. So learners prefer personalization learning as it is more focused to them. Here's the thing, rather than using formal voice, they like or they prefer something more casual and conversational voice. This is like a friendly environment, and it's like a conversation between friends or in a classroom. All right. I know sometimes when we learn something, when we are very good at something, we treat ourselves as professional. But you have to understand, your learners are not. And sometimes if you use all these professional sounding terms or complicated namings, they will feel a gap between you and them. So try to be simple and casual. Try to use daily use language and do understand about the demographics of your learners, because it's very important for this principle. The next one would be voice principle. Now this is very straightforward and it's part of fostering generative processing. Learners will experience better learning when real presenters are making voice instead of using Siri, Google Assistant. All right. If you compare this, your learners will definitely go for the real human voice because it's much more friendlier. It sounds like them. It sounds like someone is speaking to them instead of a computer is trying to make a conversation with them. All right. So very easy for you to apply. Number one, narrate the content with human audio. Self-recorded. You can get a professional to do it for you. You can also get other people, your friends, your families, as long as it comes from a human. And do note this. You have to use a high quality microphone and use appropriate audio editing software so you'll be able to maximize the output. The last one, image principle, fostering generative processing as well. So this, it means that when we are learning something, let's say when we are watching a video, if you look at a talking head videos all the time, you will feel, sometimes you might feel okay, but I think you would prefer to have a high quality and relevant visuals because it helps you to connect. It helps you to relate with the concept. All right. Not everything, not like, for example, if I'm talking about history and I put my talking head all the way down, you would feel irrelevant because I'm not a history guy. I'm not the person who lived during that period, maybe World War II or World War I period. I don't look like that. So it's irrelevant. You would not be able to connect. But if I put all the visuals that is related to that, you will feel like, okay, during that time, this is how it looks like. So that is the connection that we are talking about. And learning would definitely be easier for you. All right. So you can still use talking head videos. It doesn't mean that you cannot use it at all, but try to use it, for example, intro, where you can develop connections and trust. And if you put it on outro, it means that you're trying to summarize something. You can do that. All right. And in the middle, apply relevant and meaningful images that align with your content. So right now, we're going to explore about educational video. Now, in the 21st century, we acquire new knowledge and skills differently. All right. Maybe 10 or 20 years ago, we need to rely on manuals, instruction manuals. For example, if you want to operate something, we have to go and look on all these static images, tags, printed tags, all this to understand things. But now, all right, we have videos and it's easier for us to understand. It is also very quick for us to retain new information. So videos are designed to explore new concepts and ideas, transfer skills and knowledge, and most importantly, demonstrate certain actions or processes. We have 6 different types of educational videos that are tailored for specific audience or training styles, which we're going to start with lecture educational video. Now, lecture is very simple to understand. It always features with your lecturer or instructor on screen, and he or her will be narrating the presentation slide containing supporting visuals, like what I'm doing right now. I'm actually lecturing you guys. All right. So learners can access to the lecture videos at their own leisure after instructors complete the recording. Now this, we have 2 methods. If you want to do it simple, you just need to have a few slides and then simple voiceover, like what I'm doing right now. Okay. And another one is professionally done with more interactive visuals. So you have all the animations going on. You have all the, when your learners are clicking on something, it will come up with something, all that. So this typically longer because it covers the whole lecture, but it can be a valuable resource for your learners to learn the subject. Next, we have screencast. Now, screencast is very easy to understand. It just means screen recording. And usually we don't have any talking head because we focus on the demonstration to show you how to perform on certain tasks or solve issues quickly. Now, with this, the main feature here is that you screen record the whole thing. You need to capture the movement of the mouse. Okay, and then after that, your instructor is going to add in the annotations and text overlay to support the narration. Now, this is not expensive. All you need to do is just you have a computer and screen recording feature, and you'll be able to create screencast educational video. Number 3, explainer educational video. So this is designed to explain the topic or concept, or we use it to simplify complicated ideas, or describe certain product or analyze services in visual style. So it usually includes a combination of illustration, real-life characters, motion graphics, or animated stories that explain the problems and propose the solutions. So this is very effective for us to summarize certain complicated ideas. Sometimes some instructors might use this explainer educational video to explain business plans, philosophies, or certain theories. Next, we have tutorial educational video. So tutorial, we also know it as how-to video. And for this one, we usually teach our learners how to perform any task or do something in full. So this type of educational video usually targets specific issue with full explanation and detail on each easy to follow steps. It's very popular among the learners because they will be able to observe direct instructions, then they will be able to follow and execute. And if they find any problems or they need some help, they can either ask the instructor straight away or they will rewind it to understand again. So usually presented in live action demonstrations, animations, screenshots, and recordings. So we do also have training educational video, but this one, it is only for professional settings. So for example, like corporation, office management. So this is for new employees. We introduce them our company culture. We try to assist them to develop new skills, for example, more communication and interpersonal skills, or we want them to operate certain software and applications that the company uses all the time. All right. So usually for this training educational video, we have actors and actresses acting in the workplace to demonstrate the right behaviors. So when the new employees they're watching, it's more familiar to them, and it's not meant for public access. All right, because of confidentiality, we do not want to simply leak out the company culture or this. And lastly, we have micro videos educational video. Now this one is typically very short, within 1 minute, and it targets one topic or concept at a time, and it's very quick. Now this one is more suitable for learners who have short attention span or learners who would like to understand simple concepts quickly, and they can watch it as many times as they want because it's very short. And in some situations, it is referred to as advertisement or marketing pieces, applying the hook formula to grab attention immediately. Now we're going to talk about the application in educational video. So we understand the type of educational video. Now it is important for us to understand the strategies to maximize the output of educational videos, that we can boost the processing of information and effectiveness of learning outcomes. So basically, we have 4 applications: segmenting, signaling, weeding, personalization. We're going to explore it one by one next. So first one, segmenting. Now segmenting is very simple. You break down the information into smaller units so your learners will be able to learn and digest effectively. And you also need to remember that although you break it down, you need to have a clear and logical organization of content. Because if everything is messed up, then it will confuse them as well. Alright, and you can also define learning objective to help your learners know what to expect. And before you move on to the next topic, you can have pauses or breaks so your learners will be able to reflect what they have learned, and this will help them to retain new information. Now the next one, applying arrows and indicators to point out important information. If you still remember, we call this signaling. You signal them. Alright, so we talk about a lot of visual signals, for example, using arrows, using color, highlighting features, bold tags, all this, but there's one thing, auditory signal. Alright, so if you use certain sound effect or voice modulation during certain scenes, they were able to notice that, and they know that maybe this is something important. Maybe this is something that they have to remember and will be used in the later lessons. Alright, so that's signaling. We also have weeding. All right, so weeding means that we take out all the extraneous unnecessary information, and when we want to highlight key points, we use high quality and relevant visuals. Don't bombard your screen with all this clutter and distracting elements. All right, so when you explain something, make sure it's concise and straight to the point. Don't make all this unnecessary elaboration. Your learners will become confused and their working memory is going to overload with all these unnecessary things. All right, and again, use more negative space, because this will help to avoid crowding and allow your learners' eyes to focus on the right content. The last one, personalization. So this one, it gives your learners an option to manage and personalize their learning experience, allowing them to control their learning pace. And one effective way to do it is that you can include fast forward or skip sections button. So if they are familiar with some concepts, some topics, they can just straight away skip it. And if it's a long video, make sure they can fast forward to the part where they need to understand. Alright, so personalized content can also be presented to learners based on their responses, providing advanced explanations or challenges as needed. So we have arrived conclusion. Alright, so once again, thank you for watching till the end. We're going to quickly summarize everything. So first one, CTML is a type of learning that uses multimedia methods, such as through the use of images and text. We have three main assumptions: dual channel, limited capacity, and active processing. We also have three cognitive load theory, CLT, proposed by Dr. John Sweller: extraneous, intrinsic, and germane load. We have 12 multimedia learning principles to help instructors develop engaging and effective multimedia learning experiences. We have coherence, signaling, redundancy, spatial contiguity, temporal contiguity, segmenting, pre-training, modality, multimedia, personalization, voice, and image principles. Next, we have 6 different types of educational video: lecture, screencast, explainer, tutorial, training, and micro videos, educational videos. And lastly, if you want to create effective 4 videos, we have 4 suggested applications: segmenting, signaling, weeding, and personalization. So we have arrived to the end. Thank you for your time, for watching till the end. I hope you learned something new today. And if you have any questions, feel free to comment it down below in the comment section. And also do refer to our website, because we have more information right there. So once again, thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate that. And if there's nothing else, thank you very much. And I'll see you again next time. Bye bye.